Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Joy if you're new here. So today, as you can probably tell by the title of this video, I'm reviewing the new Venetian Rose eyeshadow palette from Cosmetics. So this is one of my new favorite eyeshadow formulas just like ever. I mean, I think that some of the top ones are obviously, Charlotte Tilbury has a really great eyeshadow formula, Pat McGrath, and I think that Cosmetics is just right up there with the best of the best. So I'm going to be reviewing the eyeshadow palette itself, as well as comparing it to a couple of other eyeshadow palettes that I think are really similar and really close. I'll be doing a demo, swatches, and then giving my final thoughts on what I think of the palette and the quality. So before we get into it, I would really appreciate it if you press the like button if you liked the video. I mean, it's just pretty straightforward. And then also don't forget to press subscribe for more weekly videos from me. Okay, let's do it. So the Venetian Rose eyeshadow palette, this one is the newest one of the Cosmetics line. They have three other palettes, the Magic Hour palette, the Venetian Rose palette, and then the Faded Clementine palette. So this is the Venetian Rose palette. It's another 6-pan palette. We have a good range of warm rose shadows. There's 3 mattes and 3 shimmers in the palette. So this is pretty standard compared to the rest of their eyeshadow palettes that they have already. They call this a warm tone rose palette, but in my opinion, it kind of leans a little cooler. There's definitely some shades where it's obvious that it's warm, but particularly the shimmers are really what kind of convinces me that this is more cool leaning, if not just straight up neutral. As far as quality goes, I think that every shade is super, super buttery. There's only one shade in particular that is a little drier, and that's just me being super, super picky. But again, it's just another beautiful palette, beautiful quality. The shades are so high pigment that they really last all day and look beautiful throughout the day. So I've been using this palette for the past 3 days now, just testing out every single shade. I have been able to use every shade. There's only 6 of them, and they all really work beautifully together. You can really mix and match them to create a bunch of different looks, but they're definitely going to be kind of the same look, if that makes sense. They all kind of look like the same concept, just like a beautiful pink eyeshadow. It's really easy and straightforward to look at on the eyes, and I think that it's just overall just a beautifully aesthetic palette that also looks good and performs really good. I believe this palette was $40, so it's a little pricey, but I definitely think that you get your money's worth when it comes to this palette and the quality. So the look that I'm wearing right now, I'm actually wearing 3 of the 6 shades. I'm wearing the deepest brown in the palette, paired with this almost duochrome pink in the palette. And that's the color that I would say is a little drier than the others. Not by much, but it's definitely a little noticeable. It still performs really well. That shimmer, I feel like you can use really well with a brush, and it looks really good. It has pretty even application, but you could really build up the pigment if you use just a finger. So that's something to keep note of. I also used the silvery color as the inner corner color. I love the shade. It's so beautiful. I don't really have a shade that looks like this in my collection, and it's just like a perfect silver, but not too silver, which I really appreciate. I have really goldeny undertones, so things that are too silver can look kind of gray on me, and I don't really like silvers that much for that reason. But I think this one really, really works. So I used that brown in the crease, and then I layered the duochrome pink on top of that, and then I put the silver in the inner corner just to sum that all up. I feel like I kind of left that open-ended. The new Venetian Rose eyeshadow palette. It looks really similar to their Magic Hour palette. So this is the Magic Hour one, and then this is the Venetian Rose palette. So, I mean, just looking at them, you're like, oh yeah, that's almost the exact same shades, almost the exact same tones. The only thing that's really different between the two are the tones and the shimmers. Otherwise, the mattes are very, very close. I'll show some swatches side by side of what that looks like. The Venetian Rose palette is actually a little deeper than the Magic Hour palette. And also the difference in tones is that the Magic Hour one is a little bit more peachy, and then the new Venetian Rose palette leans a little bit more purpley mauve. The Magic Hour palette also has a little bit more of a golden pearl. You'll see that a lot in their shimmers, that it kind of has a goldeny undertone and a golden pearl shift to it. Whereas the Venetian Rose palette has kind of more of a silver pearl to their shimmers. So I do think that there's a place for this palette. I mean, it's definitely not an identical copy of the Magic Hour palette, but it is so similar that you may kind of just want to pick between the two. So I think if you liked a more peachy palette, then I think you should go with the Magic Hour. If you like more pure pink colors, I think you should go with the Venetian Rose palette. So some of the dupes that I found for this palette include the Marc Jacobs Fantasine palette. So this is her. It looks very, very similar. I'll show you the swatches of what they look like side by side. On the top row is the Venetian Rose palette, and then on the bottom row is the Marc Jacobs palette. And Marc Jacobs has 7 colors in the palette, so I kind of just picked the ones that I thought looked the most similar to the palette, to the M Cosmetics palette. So as you can tell, there's not really any exact matches, but they're really, really close. Marc Jacobs has a little bit more of a range from light to deep, and whereas M Cosmetics Venetian Rose kind of just falls right in the middle. Again, I would say that the difference within the two palettes is that the Marc Jacobs leans a little bit more peachy, and the M Cosmetics is again a little bit more mauve. I've noticed that this is kind of a little bit deeper and really falls right within the like mid-tone range of color, of the color spectrum. The quality of the M Cosmetics is actually just a smidge better than the Marc Jacobs quality. I love the Marc Jacobs formula. It looks so beautiful on the eye. And I think between the two, you'll actually get very similar looks on the eye, but the quality of the M Cosmetics is just a little bit more smooth and a little bit more buttery. And so like I said, the M Cosmetics formula is really kind of unbeaten in that way. As far as colors go, the Marc Jacobs one is very, very close in a lot of the shades. In particular, the shimmery color looks very similar to the duochrome shimmer that's in the M Cosmetics Venetian Rose palette. So the last comparison palette is the Pat McGrath Divine Rose 1 palette. So this is the cool tone rose palette. I would say that the differences between the two is that the Pat McGrath has more shimmers, more cool purple. It's overall just a bigger palette, so it's kind of hard to compare the two. I think that the M Cosmetics palette is just a little bit more balanced than the Pat McGrath palette. You can come up with looks a lot better. On the swatches, there's an extra swatch, so I have 7 swatches on the Pat McGrath side, and that's really just to compare Pat McGrath's special shimmer shade. I think that that special shimmer shade is really, really close to the duochrome and the Venetian Rose palette, but it's not quite the same. I think that if you did some mixing and matchings of the shimmers in the Pat McGrath palette, you can get really close to the Venetian Rose shimmers. They're so, so close, but again, not exactly the same. I find that the Pat McGrath palette is actually a little bit more purple than the Venetian Rose. So I think the Pat McGrath palette is actually $80 more expensive than the Venetian Rose palette. So obviously there's a huge price difference between the two. I would recommend the Venetian Rose palette over that one. But again, it's kind of, it serves different purposes and they definitely fill a different space in my makeup collection. Other than that, there really aren't too many comparable palettes. I think probably the closest palette that there is to it is actually the Magic Hour palette within the same brand, which is kind of weird. I feel like they should have made a little bit more of a distinction between Magic Hour and the Venetian Rose palette. But overall, I don't regret having both of them. I really like both of them. So final thoughts. I think that the Venetian Rose palette would be a really great palette just for traveling or also for gifting. I think that it's just the appropriate size and like it's really within a good price range. All of these shades are usable and wearable and they don't look too extreme. It's kind of a great everyday palette if you're really into pink tones. So again, the same good quality as all the other palettes within the line. I think that if you haven't tried one of the M Cosmetics eyeshadow palettes, that you definitely should pick one of your favorite colors. And I think all of them are actually really, really great. I don't have the Faded Clementine to review against these, but I think that it wouldn't have really lined up that closely to the Venetian Rose anyway. Between the two of them, if I actually had to pick between the two, Venetian Rose and Magic Hour, I would actually pick Magic Hour. Again, this one leans more gold and this one leans a little bit more silver. I like both of them. I'll wear both of them. They're both beautiful, but I would actually recommend Magic Hour a little bit more. But that's just kind of my preference. Again, that's a color preference, that's a skin tone preference. Both of them are, I think, different enough that you could have both of them in your collection and it'd be just fine. But if you just wanted to pick up one, Magic Hour is the one I would go with. So if you found this video helpful, it would really help me out if you pressed the like button. It's pretty straightforward. And then also let me know in the comment section what you would like me to review next, and I will get right on that. Otherwise, I'll see you at the same time, same place, next week. Bye!
Oh, are you doing the review part now?
Yeah.
How do you like it?
It's good. I'm kind of nervous. I'm kind of shy. I mean...
Very like friends, okay.
let's start that over. Let's just start it over right from the top.